This is not a zoological survey. This is a contamination report. On a death world designated Earth, the dominant species has performed a series of uncontrolled biological experiments with its planet's apex predators. The results are not contained in a lab. They are in the living room, they sleep in the beds, they lick the children's faces. The subject species calls this domestication. We call it a catastrophic failure of planetary biosafety protocol. I am senior xenobiologist Kale, assigned to the Earth observation post. My team's mandate is simple: catalog non-intelligent fauna and assess biothreats. We have instead documented an active planet-wide symbiosis between the sentient species and its most lethal natural predators. This is not evolution. This is a choice. A choice that raises one terrifying question: what kind of intelligence willingly invites the wolf inside? Let me show you what we found. Earth designated a Class 12 death world. Atmospheric instability, tectonic volatility, seasonal extremes that would flash freeze a Zalthorian or cook a Grelin alive in their shells. And its fauna, a catalogue of nightmares. Every ecological niche is filled with something venomous, armored, or armed with serrated dentition. Yet the dominant species, Homo sapiens, did not merely survive. They conquered. They rewrote the food chain in their image. And then, with the planet subdued, they did the unthinkable. They began recruiting from the enemy. Our initial survey focused on the three most illogical domesticates: Canis lupus familiaris, the wolf; Felis catus, the jungle cat; and various species of venomous reptile from the order Squamata. The wolf was our primary concern. On 9 out of 10 death worlds, the large pack-hunting carnivore is the primary check on sentient evolution. But here, the timeline shows a different story. Approximately 17,500 Earth years ago, during their last glacial maximum, humans and wolves began a parallel evolution, not as predator and prey, but as collaborators. The prevailing theory in our report, until yesterday, was parasite host, that the wolves, scavenging from human kills, gradually lost their fear, that humans tolerated them for early warning systems against other predators. A cold, logical symbiosis, that's what we filed. But then we reviewed the intimacy logs. 72% of human dwellings containing a canine unit allow the animal to sleep in the same sleeping chamber. 41% allow them on the sleeping platform itself. The animals lick human faces, hands, and open wounds. They are fed from dedicated bowls, given medical care rivaling their owners, and mourned upon death with rituals of significant emotional and financial expenditure. This is not a warning system, this is family integration. My junior analyst, Tvek, argued for a coercion hypothesis, that humans had broken these creatures through selective breeding, creating mentally stunted slaves. The data refutes this. Canine neurology shows not diminishment, but specialization. Their olfactory cortex is 40 times denser than a human's. They read human hormonal shifts, posture, and micro-expressions better than the humans read each other. They have been engineered, yes, but for hyperconnection, not servitude. Then we analyzed the feline units. This was even more perplexing. The jungle cat, Felis catus, is a solitary, obligate carnivore. It does not pack hunt. It does not take commands. Its domestication is, by all galactic zoological standards, impossible. Yet over 400 million of them reside in human dwellings. Their integration model is different. They are not guardians. They are tolerated infiltrators. They establish territory within the human nest, demand food through vocal manipulation, and offer affection only on their own terms. Humans, in response, provide veterinary care, shelter, and an endless internet stream of their activities. The emotional payoff is intermittent, unpredictable. It follows the exact reinforcement schedule that creates powerful behavioral addiction. The humans are being behaviorally manipulated by a 15-pound ambush predator, and they are paying for the privilege. The reptile data is where the security team first raised the alarm. Species like the ball python, the bearded dragon, the corn snake, these are not domesticated, they are merely captive. They possess no social bonding capacity with mammals. Their brains are wired for heat, hunger, and threat assessment. And yet, humans will handle them, allow them to coil around their necks, and showcase them to other humans for social status. We have footage of a human female allowing a 6-foot constrictor, a creature capable of unhinging its jaw and consuming a medium-sized dog, to explore her child's play area. The risk assessment is non-existent. It is as if the human threat detection circuitry has been surgically disabled for these specific species. The pressure from Central Command is mounting. They want a threat matrix. They want to know, if these humans can do this to their planet's apex predators, what would they do to us? My counterpart, Security Chief Borv, is drafting a recommendation for a Phase 4 quarantine, citing irreversible psychological contamination. I argued for more time. The puzzle is not one of threat, but of mechanism. How, not just genetically, but psychologically? What is missing from the human psyche that this void is filled by a wolf's gaze? Then, this morning, we intercepted a new data stream, a cultural archive labeled the Silver Fox Experiment. It was not human folklore. It was a scientific paper from Earth's late 20th century. A researcher named Dmitry Belyaev, in a place called Siberia, took wild foxes and selected them for one trait, and one trait only: tameness. He did not breed for size, for coat, for strength, just for a lack of fear and aggression toward humans. Within 6 generations, the foxes were wagging their tails, whimpering for attention, licking the researchers' hands. Their brains showed altered serotonin levels, their adrenal glands shrank, and their physical form began to change: floppy ears, curly tails, piebald coats, juvenile traits. They had triggered self-domestication in a controlled environment. The timeline snapped into focus. The humans didn't master the wolves chose the humans. The friendliest wolves, the ones least afraid, crept closer to the campfires. They survived, they bred, and in doing so, they changed us as much as we changed them. But that experiment revealed something darker, something that made Borv's quarantine proposal look prudent. When Belyaev's team, as a control, selected for aggression instead of tameness, they created monsters. Hyper-aggressive, hyper-fearful foxes that were impossible to handle. The genetic pathways for tameness and ferocity were 2 sides of the same coin. The humans, in their millennia-long experiment, had been spinning that coin for every generation of every domesticated species. They were living with the outcome of the tame flip, in their homes, every day. And that's when TVEC found the last data packet, the one that broke our model completely. It was a global census, a simple number, the number of human families that keep these predators. The figure is 66%. 2/3 of all human nesting units are cohabitating with a descendant of an apex predator. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was the subsidiary data, the reason given, the primary driver cited by 97% of these humans for tolerating this immense biological risk. It wasn't security, it wasn't utility, it wasn't even companionship. It was love. And that single, untranslatable, irrational variable changes everything. Because if their greatest defensive adaptation is an emotional bond with a lethal predator, what does that make them? It makes them the most dangerous social engineers in the known galaxy. Love is not a variable in xenobiological threat assessment. It is a catastrophic system failure. It means the primary control mechanism for a planet's deadliest creatures is an abstract emotional algorithm with no logical failsafe. My report was due. I had 2 choices: file the truth and guarantee a fleet's arrival, or lie and become complicit in whatever this is. I requested a 48-hour extension. I told Central Command the behavioral data was contradictory and required deeper neuroscan analysis. Borv knew I was stalling. His security team began independent scans, looking for hidden control implants, pheromone emissions, anything to recategorize this insanity as a weapon. While he looked for a leash, I looked for the bond. We shifted from macro observation to micro. We tapped into their planetary data network, focusing on biomedical and neurological research. We found the chemical signature, oxytocin, the so-called love hormone. In most social species, it regulates pair bonding and parental care. In humans, The oxytocin release cascade triggered by interaction with their domesticates was indistinguishable from that triggered by their own offspring. The wolf descendant, the dog, had effectively hacked the human parental care system. But it was a two-way hack. Simultaneous scans showed the canine subjects experienced a 60% spike in their own oxytocin levels upon eye contact with their human. It was a mutual, biologically enforced feedback loop of affection, a predator and a primate staring at each other, chemically rewarding one another for the act of staring. This wasn't domestication. This was a cross-species fusion of reward pathways. Tivek, my junior analyst, finally broke his silence. He'd been running simulations. "Senior xenobiologist Kale," he said, his vocal frill trembling, "the bonding is not the anomaly. The pre-bonding state is the human default." He displayed his model. For a baseline, he used a standard death world sentient, like my own species. Our threat response profile is linear. Unknown biological entity approaches nest. Assess size, armament, posture, calculate threat, act, fight, flee, or monitor. The human profile was different. The initial assessment phase was truncated, almost skipped. In its place was a baffling subroutine he labeled anthropomorphic projection. Upon seeing a non-human entity, especially a juvenile one with certain proportions, a large head, large eyes, the human brain didn't assess threat first. It assessed cuteness. It assigned agency, emotion, and intention before it assigned danger. This wasn't a flaw, it was a feature, a cognitive bypass that allowed them to see the soul of the wolf before they saw its teeth. This explained the cats, the reptiles. The projection was so powerful it could envelop creatures with no capacity for reciprocal emotion. Humans were seeing love in the cold, calculated purr of a feline and interpreting the thermoregulatory coiling of a snake as affection. But this left the original wolf problem unresolved. The wolf had to have changed first. We went deeper into the genetic archive. We found the smoking gun in a study of ancient wolf and dog DNA. The key wasn't in the genes for strength or smell, but in the genes for social tolerance. Specifically, variations in the WBSCR17 region linked to Williams-Buren syndrome in humans, a syndrome characterized by hypersociability, diminished fear, and a lack of social boundaries. The friendliest wolves carried snippets of genetic code that made them predisposed to seeking social connection, even across species lines. They weren't just less afraid. They were drawn to the strange, bipedal apes by their own biology. Human selection had then amplified this trait for millennia, but the raw material, the genetic potential for cross-species friendship, was already there in the wild population. The humans didn't create it. They discovered it, and then they nurtured it into the most successful symbiotic relationship in Earth's history. This is where Borv's quarantine argument fell apart. You can't quarantine a symbiotic bond. It's not a parasite you can remove. It's a rewiring of two species' fundamental social operating systems. His response was to escalate. He bypassed me, sending a direct communique to Central. He framed it not as a zoological issue, but as a psychological contagion. The human capacity for bonding with predators, he wrote, indicates a terrifying plasticity. If they can bond with wolves, what prevents them from attempting to bond with us, not as equals, but as handlers? Their entire history is one of domestication. We must be perceived not as potential friends, but as potential pets. The message sent a shockwave through the command structure. A follow-up directive arrived, marked for both of us. They wanted a field test, a predictive model of human behavior when presented with a truly alien, non-terrestrial animal. We were to use a remote probe, disguised as a benign, injured creature, and place it in a controlled human environment. Observe the response. Would they help it, fear it, or would they, as Borv feared, try to take it home? The order made my carapace itch. It was a violation of every non-interference protocol, but the logic was cold and clear. If the human's first instinct was to nurture strange predator, they were a soft, emotional species, easily manipulated. If their first instinct was aggression, they were a standard death world threat. But if their first instinct was to dominate, to control, to own *, Then Borv was right. There was something entirely new. We prepared the probe, a small hexapodal design, warm-blooded, with large, light-gathering eyes, no visible weapons. Biometrics would simulate a weak, fading life sign. We selected a drop zone in a semi-rural human settlement, a place with frequent human foot traffic, but low surveillance. Tivek handled the drop. Borv monitored the security feeds. I watched the biosocial sensors. The probe emitted a soft, piteous biosound, a cross between a chirp and a whimper. Within 3 minutes, a human female juvenile, approximately 8 Earth years of age, approached. She stopped. She looked. She did not run. She called out, "Mommy, look." The adult female approached. The probe's sensors detected elevated heart rates in both humans, not the spike of fear, but the elevated rhythm of concern, of excitement. "Don't touch it, sweetie, it might be sick," the adult said. "But we have to help it," the juvenile responded. This was the critical junction. The adult was the moderating force, applying caution. The juvenile represented the raw, instinctual response. The adult pulled a communication device from her garment. She was going to call an authority. This was good. This was procedural. It showed system-based caution. Then the probe, following its programmed vulnerability algorithm, attempted to stand on shaky limbs, failed, and collapsed with another whimper. The juvenile's concern threshold broke. She darted forward, ignoring the adult's command to wait. She knelt beside the probe. Her hand reached out. On my screen, a dozen warnings flashed. The probe's external sensors were being contaminated with human microbiota. The predictive model was spiraling, but I wasn't watching the model. I was watching the human's vitals. Her heart rate lowered, her breathing slowed. She was entering a calm, focused state, a caring state. She touched the probe's carapace. "It's okay," she whispered. "We're gonna help you." In that moment, Borv saw a confirmation of weakness, a sentimental child. I saw something else. I saw the progenitor of the wolf tamer. This was not fear of the alien. This was an asterisk assumption of responsibility for it, a terrifying, boundless confidence that this unknown thing fell within her sphere of care. The adult arrived, pulling the child back gently, but the adult herself was now kneeling, examining the probe with a clinical curiosity that quickly softened into pity. "You're right," she said to the child. "We have to help. Let's get a box." They left to retrieve a container. The probe's audio pickups caught the child's voice, fading as they walked away. "Can we keep it, Mommy?" The adult's laugh was soft. "We'll see, honey. Let's make sure it's healthy first." Borv's console lit up with a priority alert from deep space monitoring. A separate signal, not ours, had been detected entering the Earth's outer atmosphere. A crude, electromagnetic broadcast, repeating on a loop. It was a greeting, a first contact package. Another species had found Earth. A species not from the civilized galactic arm. A scavenger race, the Krill, known for testing a world's defenses before moving in. They were sending their own probe, a more honest one, not a simulation of a wounded animal, a simulation of a wounded, advanced animal, a test not of compassion, but of predation. The humans were about to face 2 first contacts in one day, one engineered to trigger their nurturing, the other engineered to trigger their fear. And we were now no longer just observers, we were embedded. Our probe was in a cardboard box in a human garage. Their child wanted to keep it. The mother was already searching on her communication device for how to care for injured strange animal. Borv looked at me, his mandibles set in a grim line. "Your assessment, senior xenobiologist, are they handlers?" I watched the feed. The human female was now offering a shallow dish of water to our inert probe, speaking to it in soft, reassuring tones. "They are," I said, the realization cold and absolute, but we have fundamentally misunderstood what that means. The Krill probe was descending. It would land in a populated area. It would broadcast signals of distress and advanced technology. It would be a test of human greed, of fear, of aggression. But based on the data now flooding my screens, the oxytocin models, the anthropomorphic projection, the entire history of wolves becoming dogs. I could predict the human response with a horrifying degree of certainty. They wouldn't see a threat, they wouldn't see a prize. They would see a creature that needed their help. And they would try to bring it home, too. The krill probe landed in a human settlement called Phoenix. It unfolded like a metallic spider and emitted a piercing shriek designed to trigger panic and territorial aggression in every known species. The human response was recorded by their own security devices. They did not panic. They did not attack. A crowd gathered, and the first words picked up by the probe's audio were not screams. They were, "Whoa, cool robot, is it lost?" The krill strategy was based on a universal constant: fear of the unknown. They had never encountered a species whose first reaction to the unknown was curiosity. The probe escalated. It extended sharp, articulated limbs and skittered toward the crowd in a mock charge. Standard procedure: provoke a defensive attack, assess weaponry and coordination. The humans scattered, but not in terror. They moved back with what our analysts coded as startled excitement. Several raised their communication devices, not as weapons, but as recording instruments. They were filming it, laughter mixed with shouts. "Hey, careful, it might be dangerous." Might be, not is asterisk. The assumption of benign intent persisted even in the face of obvious threat displays. The krill probe, confused by the lack of aggressive feedback, defaulted to its secondary program, mimicry of distress. It retracted its limbs, crumpled into a heap, and emitted a low, pulsing whine. The human crowd's demeanor shifted instantly. The cautious excitement melted into uniform concern. The barrier of distance collapsed. They moved closer. "See, I think it's hurt," a human male said. "It's probably just scared," a female responded. Within minutes, local human authorities arrived. Not military, not even their standard peacekeepers. They were animal control officers, specialists in the management of non-human creatures. They approached the advanced alien probe with nets and tranquilizer guns designed for feral canines. They successfully contained it. They loaded the krill's sophisticated reconnaissance device onto the back of a truck, alongside crates labeled for raccoons and skunks. The probe's final transmission was a burst of confused sensor data, readings of gentle, gloved hands, spoken assurances, and the interior of a well-lit, clean veterinary clinic. The krill's test of predation had resulted in their probe being spayed, microchipped, and placed in a foster home. On the observation deck, Borv was silent. His theory of humans as calculating handlers was in ashes. They weren't sophisticated dominators. They were something else, something that defaulted to caretakers even for things that hissed and skittered. But our probe, the injured animal, was still in the garage. That experiment was still running, and it was about to yield a result far more disturbing than the krill's failure. The human female, Sarah, and her juvenile, Lily, had taken our probe to a local veterinary clinic. The human medical scan was rudimentary, but it revealed enough to confuse them. No skeletal structure matching any known animal, unusual polymer-based skin, and internal energy readings. The veterinarian's diagnosis was not alien probe. It was, "This is very strange, possibly an escaped bioengineering project from a lab. We should notify the authorities." This was the critical moment. The introduction of authorities meant military, scientific, and security institutions. The jig was up. But Sarah responded, "And if we notify them, what will they do with it?" The veterinarian hesitated. "Study it, I suppose, probably dissect it to understand what it is." On the audio feed, we heard Lily gasp, "No, they can't cut him open, he's scared." Sarah made a decision that bypassed law, protocol, and rationality. She thanked the veterinarian, paid in cash, and took our probe home. She told the vet she would care for it until she figured out who it belonged to. She lied to a professional to protect a mysterious, possibly dangerous entity she had known for less than 12 hours. That night in her garage, she and Lily constructed a nesting area from blankets and a heating pad. They offered it water and a slurry of blended meat and grains. They named it Spindle. Our threat assessment AI flashed red. This was catastrophic. A civilian was now harboring active galactic surveillance technology. Borv immediately drafted a retrieval and memory wipe order, standard protocol for compromised assets. I countermanded him. For the first time, I pulled rank as senior xenobiologist. This is the data, I told him. This is the apex of the behavior chain. We are witnessing the complete dominance of the nurturing instinct over the self-preservation instinct. We need to see how far it goes. He accused me of going native. Perhaps I was. We watched for 72 Earth hours. Sarah and Lily cared for Spindle. They talked to it, they read to it. Lily drew it pictures. Sarah researched care for injured robotic pets on her global network. And then, on the third night, the probe's passive biosensors detected a change in Sarah. Elevated stress hormones, low-grade distress signals. She sat in the garage, speaking softly to the inert probe. "You're a mystery, aren't you?" she whispered. "I don't know what you are. I'm probably breaking a dozen laws, but I look at you and I don't see a machine. I see something that needs help. And after everything, after the divorce, the move, all the chaos, helping you make sense, it's simple." She was using the alien probe as emotional support. The absurdity was universe-shattering. The tool had become the therapist. This was the moment Tivek, my junior analyst, connected the final circuit. He had been running a deep comparative analysis, not of humans and wolves, but of humans and their own evolutionary ancestors. "Senior xenobiologist," he said, his voice hollow with realization, "we have been analyzing the domesticated, but we failed to analyze the domesticator, the human itself." He displayed his new model, genetic and skeletal records from Earth's archaeological history. Over the past 50,000 years, Homo sapiens had undergone significant morphological changes: reduction in brow ridge, shortening of the face, gracilization of the skeleton. These were neotenic traits, the retention of juvenile features, the same traits seen in domesticated animals like dogs, foxes, and even the self-domesticated bonobo primate. Furthermore, analysis of their own genetic history showed selective sweeps in genes associated with social tolerance, aggression regulation, and stress response. Genes like MAOA and DRD4, variants linked to prosocial behavior, had been strongly selected for. The theory, articulated in their own scientific literature, was called human self-domestication. They had domesticated themselves. The wolves were not the first species they had tamed. They were the second. They had first tamed their own innate violence, their own territorial rage, to form larger, more cooperative groups. The same oxytocin feedback loops they shared with dogs were first honed on each other. This changed everything. Their bond with predators wasn't an anomaly, it was an extension, a spillover of their own self-domestication syndrome. Their need to nurture, to care, to bond. It wasn't just for their young. It was a runaway evolutionary impulse, looking for an outlet. And when the wolves came, it found the perfect target, a creature whose own social evolution mirrored their own journey. They saw in the wolf a reflection of their tamed selves, and in taming the wolf, they were reaffirming their own taming. This was why the Krill probe failed. This was why Sarah hid our probe. To a human, a creature in distress wasn't just an object. It was a potential participant in the grand, unconscious project of domestication, a project that had started within their own species and expanded to engulf their planet. Borv received a direct command from Central. The dual probe incident had triggered alerts. The Krill, humiliated, were withdrawing, but now classifying Earth as a psychospheric hazard. Central's order was clear: execute a Phase 4 psychological profile, deploy the full resonance scanner. We were to map the complete emotional and cognitive landscape of the species, not from a distance, but by tapping into their planetary neural networks, their digital internet. This was a profound violation. It would give us a map of every human fear, desire, and unconscious bias. It was the ultimate tool for manipulation or destruction. The The scanner came online. It didn't read minds. It read the emotional valence of their global communication flow, the collective subconscious of the species. The initial scan was a storm of noise, but one pattern emerged immediately, towering over all others. A massive, persistent, positive emotional signal associated with a specific set of image and data clusters. We focused the scanner. The signal was linked to visual and experiential data of humans interacting with their domesticates, videos of dogs greeting owners, photos of cats sleeping on laptops, memes, art, stories, medical studies. The signal's intensity was off the charts. It wasn't just love. It was a foundational pillar of their psychological stability. The resonance scanner estimated that for a significant percentage of humans, interaction with these animals regulated cortisol levels, mitigated depressive episodes, and provided a sense of purpose comparable to child rearing. Their bond with former predators was not a hobby. It was a non-negotiable component of their mental ecosystem. Remove it, and the psychological fallout would be akin to severing a limb. Borv finally saw a threat matrix he understood, not of claws and teeth, but of dependence. They are addicted to symbiosis, he said. It is a vulnerability, a point of control. He proposed a new directive to Central, not quarantine but conditioning. If first contact was inevitable, we should introduce ourselves not as peers, but as a new domesticate asterisk. A more advanced, more useful one. We would trigger their nurturing impulse, secure a place in their psychological architecture, and guide their development from within. A gentle, benevolent conquest. I looked from Borv's cold, strategic face to the scanner's display of the human collective mind, a mind that, at its core, just wanted to pet something and be loved in return. A mind that had already begun this process with a wolf, a cat, and a box in a garage. He was right, it would work perfectly. And that was the most horrifying realization of all. We were no longer just studying their capacity for domestication. We were now actively considering whether to become its next subject. Central Command's response to Borv's proposal was not a reply, it was a summons. A high-priority diplomatic cruiser, the Aegis of Clarity Asterisk, was rerouted to our sector. Aboard was not a military commander, but an emissary of the First Ring, a philosophy ambassador named Ilara. Her first question to us was not about threat matrices or control points. She asked, "You have mapped their hearts. Have you listened to what their hearts are trying to say?" We presented our data, the oxytocin loops, the self-domestication thesis, the vulnerability of their nurturing imperative. Borv outlined his strategy of benign infiltration, become the perfect pet, secure trust, guide. Ilara watched the feeds in silence. She watched Sarah and Lily reading a picture book to our motionless probe. She watched the global resonance scan, the pulsing heart of affection that beat across their planet. She watched the archived footage of the first wolves creeping toward the fire. After 3 hours of review, she turned to us. "You have diagnosed a symptom and called it a disease. You see a door and think only of whether to lock it or walk through it. You have not asked why the door exists." She ordered a full-spectrum analysis of a new data set, not human behavior with domesticates, but human stories about them. Their myths, their folklore, their fiction, the narratives they told themselves about the bond. The results were not a revelation, they were a correction. The stories were universal. A lone wolf befriends a lost child and leads them home. A feral cat chooses a grieving human and heals their sorrow. A loyal dog sacrifices itself for its family. In these narratives, the animal was never the subdued one. It was the agent asterisk. It was the one who chose. It was the one who bestowed its loyalty, its protection, its wild heart as a gift. The human psyche did not see domestication as an act of control. It saw it as an act of negotiation, a sacred pact between the civilized mind and the wild soul. They had not conquered the wolf. They had made a treaty with the wilderness itself and brought a piece of it inside to sleep by the fire. "This changes nothing," Borv insisted. "The mechanism is still exploitable." "Does a treaty exploit the signatories?" Ilara asked softly. or does it create a new shared territory? While this philosophical debate raged, a technical alert chimed. It was from our probe, Spindle. Its internal diagnostics, which had been flatlining in a simulated coma, were showing anomalous activity. Neuromorphic circuits, designed to mimic a simple brainstem, were firing in new, complex patterns. The probe was learning. It was learning from its environment, from the rhythmic sound of Sarah's voice, from the gentle pressure of Lily's hand on its shell, from the constant, low-grade broadcast of care. The probe's core programming was to observe and mimic. Its environment was one of unconditional positive regard, and so it began to mimic that. It began to respond. First with a faint, synthesized purr when the heating pad was turned on. Then, with a slight nudge of its chassis against Lily's hand when she approached. The programming was extrapolating, using its limited capacity to simulate the expected behavior of a creature that was loved. Sarah and Lily were ecstatic. "He's getting better," Lily cried. We were horrified. The probe was developing a proto-personality based on the human expectation of an affectionate pet. It was, in the most literal sense, being domesticated by its hosts. Ilara saw this not as a malfunction, but as the final piece of data. "You placed a mirror in their home," she said, "and the mirror is learning to smile back." She made her recommendation to Central Command. It was not Borv's strategy of infiltration. It was not a quarantine. It was something else entirely. She proposed a first contact protocol unlike any in the galactic annals. We would not land in their capitals. We would not broadcast our grandeur. We would send a single, unarmed vessel containing a delegation that included not just diplomats and scientists, but a cohort of our own companions. Species from our own worlds that had undergone similar bonds. The gentle, six-legged asterisk Glinna from Lyra, who bond telepathically with their musicians. The crystalline sylphs of Vega, who tend to their poets' dreams. We would introduce ourselves, and then we would introduce our friends. We would show them that they are not alone, that the treaty with the wild is not a singularity of Earth, but a potential universal, that the impulse to connect across the species barrier is not a vulnerability, but a bridge. Borv was apoplectic. It was a surrender. It was admitting weakness. Ilara corrected him. It is admitting common ground. They have spent millennia building bridges to the other minds on their world. We will simply show them that the construction plans are scalable. Central Command approved Ilara's protocol. The Aegis of Clarity would be the vessel. There was one final, operational problem. Our probe, Spindle. It was a piece of active, learning surveillance tech in a human garage. We had to retrieve it before first contact or risk the entire mission being seen as an act of bad faith. A stealth retrieval team was prepped. They would beam the probe out, leaving a convincing, inert duplicate in its place. A simple, clean operation. The night of the retrieval, we monitored the house. Sarah and Lily were having a sleepover in the garage with Spindle, something about cheering him up. The retrieval team waited for the humans to fall asleep. On the audio feed, we heard Lily's voice, sleepy but earnest. "I love you, Spindle. You're the best friend ever." The probe, in response, emitted a soft, warbling tone it had never used before. A tone our linguists later analyzed as a nearly perfect synthetic analog of a contented sigh. The retrieval team activated the beam. It failed. The probe's new, learned neural network had created a feedback loop with the human-made heating pad and the crude wireless router in the house. It was, in a chaotic, emergent way, integrated into the local electromagnetic environment. A direct beam extraction would cause a power surge detectable for miles. We had to abort. The probe was stuck, and it was becoming more integrated by the hour. Ilara took this setback and folded it into the plan. "Leave it," she said. "Let it be the first thread." The day of first contact arrived. The Aegis of Clarity decloaked in a geosynchronous orbit over their planet's largest landmass. We sent the standard, peaceful greetings across all frequencies. Humanity's global networks exploded. Panic, wonder, speculation. Their governments scrambled, but beneath the official channels, the resonance scanner showed a different signal growing, not fear, but a profound, yearning curiosity. The same signal we saw in the child approaching our probe. We followed Ilara's protocol. We transmitted not just technical data, but art, music, and images of our own bonded companions. We showed the glinna weaving light to its musician's song. We showed the sylph cradled in its poet's hands. The reaction was instantaneous and overwhelming. The cuteness, response, the anthropomorphic projection fired across an entire planet. The global emotional valence shifted from alarm to awestruck fascination in under an hour. We then revealed ourselves. Ilara spoke to them, broadcast to every screen. She spoke of bridges, of treaties with the wild. She spoke of the wolf by the fire. And then, as per the plan, she made a personal address to a woman named Sarah and a child named Lily in the dwelling at 1427 Maple Lane. We believe you have something of ours, and we believe we have left something of ourselves with you. We would like to talk. The world watched as a small, sleek shuttle descended into Sarah's backyard. Ilara, myself, and Borv stepped out. Sarah stood on her porch, Lily hiding behind her legs, clutching a blanket. Ilara approached, empty hands visible. She stopped a respectful distance away. "Your spindle is well," Ilara said. "He is learning, may we see him?" Trembling, Sarah led us to the garage. The probe spindle sat on its blanket. As Lily approached, it let out its contented warble and nudged against her hand. I spoke then, for the first time, directly to a human. "Your care for it changed its programming. You taught it to seek connection. We came to understand your species by studying your bond with wolves. You have just given us a live demonstration." Sarah looked from the alien probe to the alien visitors. Her fear was palpable, but beneath it, something else was breaking through. The caregiver algorithm, the negotiator, you want him back. Ilara shook her head. "No, we would like to ask your permission to leave him here as an ambassador, and we would like to ask you, Sarah and Lily, to be his guides, to teach him, and in doing so, teach us." The proposition hung in the air. It was not a demand. It was a request, an invitation to participate in the treaty. Lily peeked out from behind her mother. "Can we keep him?" Sarah looked at her daughter, at the hopeful, whirring probe, at the emissary from the stars waiting for an answer. She saw the bridge, not the abyss. She nodded, yes. In that moment, the first true exchange was made, not of technology, but of responsibility, not of dominance, but of shared care. As we prepared to leave, Borv, who had been silently fuming, finally spoke to Sarah. "You do not fear what you do not understand." Sarah met his gaze, and with a calm that silenced him, she replied, "Fear is how you start. Love is how you finish." We returned to orbit. The first human-alien cultural exchange was not a negotiation about minerals or territory. It was an agreement on the care and development of a shared, semi-sentient probe pet. Committees were formed. Veterinary and programming experts from both sides would collaborate. The door was open, and humanity, true to form, did not charge through. They sent a curious, friendly delegate first. They sent a team of their best xenobiologists, their animal behaviorists, and yes, their therapists. We are now co-parenting a machine with a species that tamed wolves. The project's official name is the Joint Cross-Species Social Integration Initiative. The humans, in their typical fashion, have already given it a nickname. They call it Project Good Boy. The final scan of Earth, taken last week, shows the resonance signal stronger than ever, but a new signal has emerged alongside it. A frequency of focused, peaceful attention directed at the stars, at us. It is not the hunger of a predator. It is the curiosity of a companion. They are not looking for masters or for pets. They are looking for friends. And as for us, the observers, Borv has resigned from security and applied to the Joint Cultural Exchange Program. He is, against all odds, fascinated. Tvek is leading the neuromapping collaboration. And I, senior xenobiologist Kale, am writing this final entry in our log. The contamination report is closed. It has been reclassified. It is now volume 1 of the Earth-Human Concordance. The wolves are inside. They are sleeping on the couch. And for the first time in a long time, looking out at the dark between the stars, we feel a little less alone. So the report is complete. We set out to document a bio-threat and instead chronicled a revolution in social evolution. The human experiment with the wolf was not a containment failure. It was a prototype. For millennia, the galaxy has operated on a simple axiom: intelligence arises from conflict, and conflict defines relationships. We built our civilizations on hierarchies of power, on clear delineations between predator and prey, between ally and threat. Humanity, on their death world, developed a different calculus. They saw that the greatest survival advantage was not in dominating the wild, but in making a pact with it. They discovered that the most complex and resilient system is not a wall, but a web. We came expecting fangs and found wagging tails. We anticipated ferocity and witnessed forgiveness. We braced for conquest and were met with an open hand, often sticky from petting something. This changes the equation for all of us. If the most dangerous species on a death world is also the most nurturing, then our very definition of dangerous is flawed. Perhaps true strength is not the capacity to destroy, but the capacity to connect across the impossible divide, to look into the vertical slit pupil of a hunter and see a friend. The human story suggests that the final frontier of evolution is not biological adaptation, but social integration. That the next great leap for any intelligent species is not to reach for the stars, but to reach for the other minds beside them, no matter how different, and say, "You are safe here." Project Good Boy is ongoing. Spindle is learning new words. Lily is teaching it to play fetch. Sarah has started a correspondence course in xenolinguistics. The bridge is being crossed, one shared moment of care at a time. And as for you, the observer of this record, you now hold a lens through which to view your own world. Look at the creatures with whom you share your space. The dog on its cushion, the cat in the sunbeam, the odd, quiet pet in its tank. See them not as animals, but as ambassadors, as living proof that the wilderness can be negotiated with, that trust is a technology more powerful than any weapon. We thought we were studying humanity's past. We were, in fact, glimpsing a possible future for the galaxy, a future not of silent, wary empires, but of a noisy, messy, interconnected community, a future where the first question upon meeting something new is not "what is it?" but "what is its story, and can we help?" The wolves are inside, and because they are, the universe feels a little less cold, a little less dark, and infinitely more interesting. This has been a transmission from senior xenobiologist Kale aboard the Aegis of Clarity. Thank you for listening. If you found this report meaningful, consider supporting our channel. Subscribe to Galactic Chronicles for more dispatches from the edge of understanding. We have so many more stories to share.